Welcome to your Houston Rewind for May 29th through June 2nd. I'm KHOU 11 digital anchor Brandy Smith. We know catching up on the news can be a little overwhelming in a city like Houston where it never seems to stop. So every weekend we take this opportunity to fill you in on some of the stories you may have missed. Let's rewind. Monday, we learned the timeline of the impeachment proceedings against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. On June 20th, a special committee of senators will present the rules and procedures for the trial, and that trial should begin no later than August 28th. Maria Aguilera updated us on how the process will work.
I am directed by the House of Representatives to present to the Senate the articles of impeachment preferred against Warren Kenneth Paxton Jr., Attorney General of the state of Texas.
On the last day of the legislative session, members of the Texas House delivered the 20 articles of impeachment against Attorney General Ken Paxton to the Senate. The list of accusations include bribery, conspiracy, retaliation, and abuse of power, all of which Paxton denies.
This is about facts and the evidence. It is not about politics.
12 House representatives are now part of the Board of Managers, who will serve as prosecutors during the trial. They include Democratic Representative Ann Johnson of Houston, who will serve as vice chair, and Republican Representative Briscoe Cain of Deer Park. Representative Andrew Murr is the chairman.
The trial is understood to occur just as a civil or a criminal trial would lay out. You will see witnesses called, placed under oath, subject to both direct and cross-examination. Rules of evidence are assumed to apply.
During the impeachment process, state senators will serve as the jury. There are 19 Republicans and 12 Democrats. If every Democrat senator votes to convict Paxton, it would still require at least 9 Republican votes.
Later in the week, we learned Governor Greg Abbott named an interim attorney general since Paxton is suspended until the end of his impeachment trial. The governor selected John Scott. Scott most recently served as the Texas Secretary of State, stepping down late last year. He also worked for Abbott when he was the Attorney General. Monday marked Memorial Day, a day to pause and reflect on the sacrifices made by the men and women of our armed forces. That was KHOU 11 photojournalist Ivan Gibson playing taps. At the Veterans Memorial Cemetery in Northwest Houston, a larger ceremony saluted local service members. Michelle Choi was there.
The emotional event wrapped up just before 10:30 this morning, but people will be coming out here to the Houston National Cemetery throughout the day today to honor our fallen service members. In a show of unity, hundreds gathered here at the Houston National Cemetery this morning to remember the sacrifices of those who came before us. The annual ceremony is a tribute to those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Among those honored in today's ceremony included Purple Heart recipients and former prisoners of war. A missing man table was also set to honor the fallen and missing in action. Both Mayor Sylvester Turner and Sheila Jackson Lee spoke at the ceremony.
We are privileged to come to this sacred ground and to be able to honor those who have fallen.
More than 100,000 military service members are buried here.
I just love it out here. It's so beautiful.
Including Janie Adams' husband, who served 20 years in the Air Force before retiring and passing away in 2006.
Proud that he served his country and served it well.
It was Janie and her friend Jim Gardner's first time attending the ceremony. Jim also served in the Air Force 5 years as an instructor pilot. When asked what Memorial Day meant to him, he held back tears as he remembered 2 of his military comrades.
2 young men, one Jose Santos from Brownsville and one Zeke Encinas, a major who was the last A-1E Skyraider pilot shot down during Vietnam. It's remembering the ones we lost, not the ones that are still alive.
Michelle Choi, KHOU 11 News.
Memorial Day is kind of the unofficial start of summer, a season during which Galveston expects a boom in tourism. Visit Galveston says millions of people stayed on the island last year, and we could see even more this year. Zach Tawatari tagged along with the Beach Patrol, which is ready for the crowds.
From the surf to the shops, it feels like summer on Galveston. Visit Galveston PR manager Mary Beth Bassett says today marks the start of what's expected to be a busy summer.
Memorial Day weekend does signify the start of the summer tourism season here on Galveston Island. We expect to have about 500,000 people come to the island over 3 days.
Last year, the island had some 8.1 million visitors, a 10% increase from the year before. And with that comes the safety of visitors, especially in the water.
With that comes a lot of responsibility on our part because 32 miles of beach plus bay plus night calls.
In particular, Galveston Island Beach Patrol Chief Peter Davis says lifeguard staffing has been a challenge, but they expect to meet demand again this summer.
Everyone in every kind of job like this has had trouble finding enough guards, and we have too. So like our domestic numbers are very low, but what saved us last year and what's going to save us this year is our J1 visas that come in. We have a lot of guards that come in from Colombia. Last year we had 25, this year we're already at 42.
And Chief Davis recommends a few tips when swimming. Maintain situational awareness, swim near a lifeguard tower, avoid swimming near any kind of structure which can create a rip current, and assign a water watcher in your group.
The chief says 80% of rescues last year happened as a result of people swimming near those structures that create rip currents. We have more tips on how to stay safe in and near the water on KHOU.com. The families of Santa Fe high school shooting victims will soon be able to see evidence from that day 5 years ago. Texas lawmakers passed a bill allowing access to evidence, and Tuesday, some of the families met with the Galveston County DA. Grace White shared what comes next.
I spoke to several of the families here at the Galveston County Courthouse after this afternoon's meeting. This was just the initial step. These families will still have to come back and set up separate appointments to actually view this evidence. They'll also have to sign confidentiality agreements, but it's a step they told me they're willing to take to get the information they've been waiting on for 5 years.
Beginning a session, and I said, we're going to pass a bill come hell or high water.
These 3 mothers have been on a mission.
Everything that's been told to me, now I get to dot all those I's and cross all those T's to know if it's true or not.
A mission to get more information about their children, Chris Stone, Kimberly Vaughn, and Kyle McLeod, 3 of the 10 people killed in the Santa Fe high school shooting on May 18th, 2018.
You're never prepared. You're never prepared to see something like that, to see how your children died. But it's something you feel you need to see for closure.
And now these families will get to see the evidence from the shooting thanks to a bill passed in Austin.
We did it. For me, this is the best thing that came out of that session.
The bill allows family members of the victims to see medical examiners' reports and video from the crime scene. It was evidence that was being withheld while doctors try to restore the accused shooter's mental competency.
And we're never going to get to trial. This guy's going to be clinically insane for the rest of his life.
These mothers say they were told only 2 law enforcement agencies have body camera video from the shooting, Texas City PD and DPS. And they were told surveillance video from the school hallway does not have audio. But to them, it's pieces of their children's last moments. Moments they want to see.
What happened that day? More than just the stuff we've been fed or given or pieced together or, snippet here, snippet there. Maybe it'll give us a full view of start to finish.
This bill not only affects Santa Fe, but crime victims across the state. But if a family member is also a witness who's expected to testify at trial, it will be up to the prosecutor to decide how much information they can see. In Galveston, Grace White, KHOU 11 News.
Living in Houston, we know all about dealing with pesky mosquitoes. Agochia Loco rode along with a mosquito control crew in Brazoria County.
We followed crews on the road scoping out hot spots for mosquitoes.
They go out, they take landing rate counts.
Brazoria County, like many Texas coastal counties, has a dedicated mosquito control district.
We protect the health of the residents of Brazoria County, and we try to educate.
From April to November, and sometimes even later, crews are out trying to hit the mosquitoes where they likely multiply the most.
Any little bit of water breeds mosquitoes. So, that's the number one thing where the residents could help, is to just make sure that they keep their containers drained.
And one little pond can be a big problem. Some aggressive freshwater mosquitoes have a 20-mile flight range.
We are proactive. We go out there, we try to eliminate the sources.
As we watch these crews surveying, they noticed this spot had no baby mosquitoes yet.
What we have here is just a trap setup that we normally have when we trap out for mosquitoes.
Surveying helps crews get an idea on where an influx of mosquitoes are breeding, and it's working here in Brazoria County. In the last year, they've had 0 human cases of West Nile virus reported.
As far as when we start spraying, just when we get mosquitoes, that's what our surveillance team is doing now.
By hitting storm drains, ditches, and other common problem spots, the county hopes to knock out the bugs before they hatch.
What the chemicals do, they get pumped in through the pump box and get sprayed out through the spray nozzle.
And as the summer heats up, the county's mosquito squad ramps up, hiring extra seasonal staff.
We do get people that call in and thank us for coming out.
Ugochi Iloka, KHOU 11 News.
The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo just made history in its off-season. For the first time, a woman was elected chairman of the board. I sat down with her Tuesday to learn more about her decades of service.
I am the chairman of the board of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
How does it feel to say that?
Pretty amazing. I never would have dreamed it.
But this dream come true for Pat Mann Phillips really began to form during her Texas childhood.
My roots are in agriculture. I grew up in a farming and ranching family.
So when she moved to the 4th largest city in the country, it only made sense to connect those roots through rodeo.
This was home to me.
In 2001, Phillips started volunteering by giving school kids tours through AgVenture, eventually helping tours become its own committee. She added more committees to her slate. Joining leadership was the natural step a decade into her rodeo service.
You see things that need to be done or that you would like to see done, and there's every opportunity to make those things happen out there if it supports the mission of the show.
Now, after 11 years on the board, 3 as a vice president and 6 on the executive committee, Phillips is taking the reins of the rodeo's board of directors, the first woman ever elected chairman.
It was quite a surprise, but a pleasant surprise, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here in this role as chairman of the board.
It's chairman of the board. Any conversation about changing it to chairperson or just chair?
Well, I'm sure there might be some conversation about it, but at present I'm chairman of the board.
The first woman in the role, but Phillips, knowing just how many HLSR volunteers are women, is certain she will not be the last.
We're seeing all this talent. It's very inspiring to me and encouraging to me to see this. It's great to watch.
If you really want to see what those 35,000 rodeo volunteers do and the impact they have, look up our documentary about their service wherever you're watching this. Wednesday, a jury was selected for the 3rd capital murder trial of Antonio A.J. Armstrong Jr. Armstrong's charged with shooting and killing his parents while they slept inside their home in Southwest Houston in 2016. Hung juries led to 2 mistrials already. Adam Bennett was in court to learn what's different about these jurors.
For nearly 7 years, A.J. Armstrong and his family have come and gone from the 19th floor of the Harris County Criminal Courthouse, trying to put this case behind them. Prosecutors have been trying to put the 23-year-old in prison. Armstrong was 16 when prosecutors say he shot and killed his parents, Antonio Sr. and Dawn, while they slept inside their Southwest Houston home in July of 2016. During past trials, prosecutors said Armstrong's parents were upset with him over poor grades, alcohol, and drug use. They said alarm and cell phone records point solely to Armstrong as the killer. But defense lawyers have argued no forensic evidence links their client to the murders. They've said Armstrong saw a masked intruder that night and suggested an older brother who knew the alarm codes may have been involved. The parents of the victims, Armstrong's grandparents, support him. Armstrong has been out on bond since 2017. He's since married and became a father.
Opening statements for the trial start Monday morning. You can stay tuned to our coverage on KHOU.com as well as on our social media channels. On the eve of the start of hurricane season, meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center are ready to roll out a new tool. It focuses on a storm's potential impact and how it could affect you directly. Pat Kavlin found out what else you should know.
Thursday is the official start of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. And this year, there's one big change to give you more time to prepare and get to safety.
We first started looking at it because we knew that there was a need. We have emergency managers, other users that want more information out further in time.
The biggest change you can expect to see this year, according to Robbie Berg from the National Hurricane Center, is a 7-day storm outlook instead of the original 5-day.
Our 5-day forecasts have been reliable. So what we wanted to see is if we make 7-day forecasts, would they be just as reliable? And after that 3 or 4 years of testing, we did find that, yes, the 7-day forecasts are reliable. So that gave us enough confidence to be able to put this forecast out publicly beginning this year.
Has there been a discussion of, do we tweak the cone? Do we move to a different model that's more impact-based?
The cone is really meant to be a high-level picture of what the storm may do. We kind of look at it like a headline. If you're reading the newspaper, you're reading news reports online, you see a headline, but unless you actually go down and look at the story below, you may not get the full picture of what that particular storm may do.
That's because storms can have far-reaching impacts, even outside of that forecast cone. So it's important to know what impacts your specific area could face.
The watches and warnings that are issued by the Hurricane Center, by the National Weather Service, they actually mean something. We don't just put them out just to make sure that we cast a wide blanket. We actually are making sure that we're putting it in the right areas in those watches and warnings that really encapsulate the risk from that storm.
Online now, the KHOU 11 weather team has an online guide to get you through storm season. It's available on khou.com/hurricane. Mindfulness has become a popular form of meditation, but the practice of meditation has played a vital role in many Asian cultures for generations. As part of our coverage celebrating AAPI Heritage Month, Stephanie Whitfield took a closer look at the ancient tradition that's gone mainstream.
Mindfulness is a tool that helps people manage anxiety and stress. But the practice of meditation dates back thousands of years in Asia. For Buddhists, it's spiritual.
Meditation to us is not just for calming down the mind, which is something everybody would like to pursue. Meditation to us is a way to enlighten the mind so we can get true wisdom.
Buddhist meditation began in India and eventually spread to China. More than 2,000 years later, it's still a daily practice at Chung Tai Zen Center in Houston.
We need to deal with our everyday lives. Nowadays, people are very busy, and we are facing a lot of challenges. So after 1 week of hard working, it's worthwhile to come here to join meditation for 2 hours.
He says this is a tool to gain a better understanding of self. There are meditation centers all over Houston, and many have classes where you can learn about the practice. We're told all are welcome. Kadampa Meditation Center is in Montrose. Here, you can learn about Buddhist meditation or practice more universal meditations for love, patience, and compassion.
For example, myself and the other teachers in the U.S., we're familiar with American lifestyle. We can show how there's no difference between integrating wisdom into our heart and into our life and just living right here in Houston.
He says there's a reason this practice has been steadily growing in popularity all over the world for thousands of years. Changing your mind can change your life for the better. Stephanie Whitfield, KHOU 11 News.
Wednesday was the last day of AAPI Heritage Month. Still, on KHOU 11 Plus right now, you can watch the celebration of the culture and how AAPI people are leaving their mark on Houston. Thursday, the Texas Education Agency officially took over the largest school district in the state. Here are the 9 people appointed to Houston ISD's new Board of Managers. They replaced the elected Board of Trustees and joined the newly appointed Superintendent Mike Miles. Janelle Bluda explained how this transition will work.
One by one, HISD's newly appointed Board of Managers was sworn into office this morning, making today their first official day on the job, a process not everyone was excited about.
I don't like the secrecy. It was sad that I had to be at work at 8 o'clock, but I came here at 6 to see who the Board of Managers, I shouldn't have to do that.
The Texas Education Agency says the swearing-in was done that way as to not violate any provisions of the Open Meetings Act. Now HISD's new superintendent, Mike Miles.
But we have a lot of schools that are not performing well for our students.
Will work alongside the newly appointed 9-member Board of Managers, who range from HISD parents to graduates to active community members, replacing the former superintendent and elected board. The takeover comes after repeated failures of some schools and other issues in the district stemming back to 2019.
I'm an outcomes person, and if I can't get the job done, we can't get the outcomes, then I need to be fired.
Former elected board member Sue Dygart says today is her first official day off the job.
I think there is a normal combination of grief and optimism.
But says she's ready to support the new team if needed.
There's a lot of knowledge that we all have, and I don't expect that this group of people will be dismissive of that.
The Board of Managers will hold its first meeting on June 8th. Once the state feels HISD meets its academic standards, the elected Board of Trustees would then be phased back in. But one of the major concerns we've heard from parents is about schools closing. Jason Miles took those questions to the new superintendent, who says his goal is to improve existing campuses.
A former Army officer and diplomat,
I'm an outcomes person.
Newly appointed HISD Superintendent Mike Miles says he's laser focused on the mission at hand.
And if I can't get the job done, we can't get the outcomes, then I need to be fired.
Miles headed up Dallas ISD when TEA Commissioner Mike Morath served on its board. He says Morath called him once the court battle over the HISD takeover was finally settled, 4 years after it was initiated by, among other things, perpetually failing schools, including Wheatley High.
Commissioner Morath told us there were no immediate plans to close any schools. Is that still the case?
That is the case. There's the runway for this year, it's June already. I don't think it would be prudent to close any schools.
But he says he cannot rule out the possibility beyond next school year, nor can he promise that additional public charter schools, like ones he founded in Colorado, won't be considered down the road.
Look, the job is to make sure we have effective schools, the best schools for our kids. And that's what we're going to be focused on this year.
Miles says the onus is on him to try and win over takeover skeptics, though he realizes many people may never be on board. He also admits there's been an absence of information throughout the intervention process, so doing things more transparently is another aim.
So we have to provide good information, we have to do sense making, we have to listen, we have to get some input, and I think then we can all move forward together.
In addition to meeting with the media Thursday, Miles met with principals and other staff members. You can read more about Miles, about the new board, and about the timeline of how we got here at khou.com/education. University of Houston athletes are heading to the NCAA Outdoor Track and Field Championships this coming week, and they just might have an advantage. Jason Bristol found out what it is.
Speed City is soon heading to Austin. U of H track and field coach Carl Lewis taking his top 4 athletes to next week's NCAA Track and Field Championships, including his top male sprinter, a junior from South Africa, Sean Maswagani, who is one of the favorites to win the 100 meters. And having this massive meet at UT and not Eugene, Oregon, where it's traditionally held, could or should give the Cougs an advantage.
Basically, we look at Austin as our home too, because Texas Relays is always big for us.
Just running Texas Relays all the time, having that experience of a large crowd and just the atmosphere of Austin in general it's great.
Maswagani is heading to his 3rd straight outdoor championships. This one begins June 7th.
Houston has a thriving art scene, and a downtown warehouse is the place to be to check out local artists. Dozens of artists show off their work at this hidden gem once a month. This is a little embarrassing to admit, but I drove through this intersection almost every day for 7 years before I decided to check out what it looked like inside Hardy & Nance Studios.
Even though we get 50 cars per minute through this intersection in rush hour hours, I would say that a lot of people like yourself, they drive by and they go, what is that? And we put banners up finally that say, oh, it's an art space.
That is an understatement. It's 17,000 square feet filled with 33 studios and about 50 in-house artists.
What makes us different is that we are artist owned and operated. So we are the ones that kind of call all of the shots. Collectively, there's about 1,000 years of experience in just the art game with all of the artists that have been here.
The studios were the dream of founder and faux bois artist Donald Tucker.
He was our fearless leader and mentor. He was a complete Renaissance man. We lost him in October of 2019 to cancer. He had been fighting it for some time, but not before he set us up pretty sweet with this operation.
Third Saturday of every month from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., the studios open for a free themed show. This one in May was called Plantasia.
We partner with local plant growers, mom and pop stuff, to give people kind of a nice experience. All botanically themed art for this particular show.
The public's invited for free to check out the gallery and each artist's studio.
So it's super accessible, and one of the things that's important for everybody that's here is that we're good hosts. Like, the doors are open, everyone has the same sort of pretty laid-back vibe.
That vibe is the product of the variety of artists using the studios.
We've got people who are teachers, people who have masters, people who have traveled the world. We've got amateurs, we've got people that have been around forever. So we like to just kind of have a mix of that at all times. And I think that's what keeps us kind of humble, you know?
Check the event calendar at hardyanddancestudios.com to see what's coming up, or say you just happen to find yourself in that busy intersection, drop by.
If you see cars here, knock on a door. Come in and get a tour.
Wherever you're watching this, we have a bunch more gems to show you, like Lake Houston Wilderness Park or Dan Joy's homemade pasta. You can also find them at khou.com/hidden gems. Gun Violence Awareness Day. Just one day, Friday, to reflect on an issue that affects so many people across the country every day. KHOU 11 Investigates and our sister stations across the country examined 1 week of gun violence. This week a year ago, when there were 1,000 shootings in 7 days. Cheryl Mercedes takes a closer look at Houston.
This week last year, Houston had 26 shootings, 13 of them deadly, but not all of them ended in arrests. Nearly 1/3 of them are still unsolved, including the murder of Mark Aguilar Jr., who was shot to death while ordering tacos in North Houston.
Relatives of Mark Aguilar Jr. gathered outside of a memorial in North Houston to mark how their lives changed forever. It was here on May 29th, 2022, that the 23-year-old son, husband, and father of a 2-year-old girl took his last breath. His mother, Stephanie, remembers it like it was yesterday.
I was at home getting ready for bed, and I got a phone call from my daughter saying that there's a body laying next to my son's vehicle, and we rushed over here to come see, and it was his.
Houston police say surveillance video shows Aguilar Jr. ordering food from a taco truck. After he walked back to his vehicle, 2 men approached him, shot him, and took off in a silver or gray Chevy Tahoe. According to Gun Violence Archive data, which gathers information from news reports, police blotters, and local sources, there were more than 1,000 shootings across the country this week last year. That's higher than last year's average of 886 shootings a week. It was also above average for Houston, which came in 3rd behind Chicago and Philadelphia. Last year, the Bayou City averaged 10 shootings per week. This week last year, it was twice as high.
We still don't have any answers, and it's really frustrating. Somebody needs to do something.
Just steps away from the memorial, Aguilar's relatives say they visit often. They somehow feel connected to Mark Jr. here, but the pain is something they are certain they will never escape.
I'm gonna hurt for the rest of my life. Like, I'm not gonna be at peace.
Aguilar's family is still hanging on to hope that they will one day get justice. But police have not determined a motive or named a suspect in that case. Crime Stoppers is offering a $5,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest.
You can take a look at the national report in this article. You'll find it at khou.com/investigations. 3 survivors of the Uvalde school shooting got the chance to practice with the Astros on Friday. They were invited by superstar Jeremy Pena. Anna Yeli Ruiz found out why this experience is extra special for one of those students.
12-year-old Mia Cerrillo is like any other typical teen. She has social media, likes hanging out with her friends, and yes, she has a celebrity crush. Who's your favorite player?
Pena.
But she's gone through so much. She's one of the Robb Elementary survivors that called 911 that day. Her father says it's a day that haunts her.
Since it happened, she won't go to sleep until about 4 or 5. Sometimes when the sun comes out, she'll go to sleep. She doesn't like the dark. She sleeps with the light on.
Her family doing so much to help her. They even started a GoFundMe to send her and other survivors to Disney. But now the Astros have stepped up to help her.
It was supposed to be a surprise, but I kind of knew something was up.
A dream for this preteen to meet her celebrity crush.
You can throw the ball to Jeremy Pena, and I start smiling.
Girl talk on the couch. Obviously, when Dad wasn't around, she revealed how much she really likes Pena. So is Jeremy Pena your boyfriend and Ivan is her boyfriend? Yeah.
No, he's my husband.
But he knows that deep down it's all about cheering his daughter up.
Their joy in their face is priceless to me, you know. I don't want to see them locked up in the room.
Meanwhile, Mia, she's ready to make that dream a reality and take a picture with her crush.
KHOU 11 was the only news crew at North Forest High School on Friday morning when new HISD Superintendent Mike Miles met with teachers and other staff. Our Michelle Choi asked him why teachers at 29 schools will have to reapply for their jobs.
HISD Superintendent Mike Miles tells me he understands there's a lot of questions and concerns, which is why his #1 priority right now, he says, is to provide as much information and clarity to his faculty, especially to the staff at the 29 schools who will have to reapply for their jobs. On that list includes North Forest High School, where we are, as well as Wheatley and Cashmere and its feeder schools. This is the first big move from the district's new superintendent. KHOU 11 was the only news crew outside North Forest as Miles walked out this morning, after wrapping up what he told me was a meeting with 9 principals to talk about the upcoming reforms. The 29 schools are now part of the district's newly assigned New Education System, or NES schools. When asked if it's because some of these schools have historically struggled, Miles told me yes and no. He says currently, while some of these schools are performing well, they're still part of a feeder pattern, which he says overall is not doing well.
If you think systemically, you can't just work on 1 or 2 schools. If kids in this school feed into that school and this school is struggling, then you have the same problem year after year.
As for the existing staff members, including teachers, Miles says they're still employed with the district and that their current contract will hold in the 2023 and 24 school year, but there's no guarantee they'll stay at the same school. He says staff members will have to reapply for their jobs during the open application process. And if they aren't chosen for the position, he says they'll then be offered a different position within the district. When asked why make the teachers reapply, here's what he told me.
One of the things that works with whole-scale reform is to make sure you have an overwhelming number of high-performing teachers. And so right now it's hard to evaluate because the evaluation of teachers have not been rigorous. And so it's hard to determine that unless we go through a performance interview.
Yeah, Miles went on to tell me he's really encouraging these teachers to reapply.
And before we go, one more reminder that we have complete coverage of the HISD takeover at khou.com/education. You can watch our entire interview with the new superintendent there or wherever you're watching this. Hope that helped you catch up on this past week and you're ready for the next one. Remember, you can tune into KHOU 11 on air, online via khou.com and YouTube, as well as by using our free KHOU 11 Plus app on Roku and Fire TV. Have a great week. Good to see you. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll see more of KHOU 11's coverage in your feed. And if you're not sure what you want to watch next, try this or this.